People, I'm Shaggy, the opinionated hippie, and this is part 27 of what I hope is a never-ending series of reviews and rankings of the Grateful Dead's Dave's Picks, an archival release series of live concerts, mostly complete shows, sometimes more than one complete show, sometimes bonus discs. This, volume 27, is a 3-disc set from a complete show from September 2nd, 1983, the most recent, not most recently released, but most recent concert released by Dave's Picks up to this point on the list, up through number 27. I think we had an 80 show, an 81 show. Now we're at an 83 show. And I love this show. Absolutely amazing. Maybe it is because the only things I have been listening to Grateful Dead wise in the last several months are the Dave's Pick series. And like I just said, 380 shows so far. I don't think we've had any 90 shows. A lot of like early 71, 72 stuff, 70 stuff. So maybe it's the freshness of it. Maybe it's the Brent of the whole thing. Maybe it's the song selection, which is fantastic. The set is fantastic. The playing is fantastic. The energy is fantastic. Yes, we got some cheesy sort of 80s keyboard sounds that Midlands use it every so often, but I like the sort of dynamic that it adds to the Dead sound. His playing is fantastic. Bob and Phil especially seem to be playing off each other really well in this show. And it is not a complete show where you have all these incredible highs. There are a couple songs that are really long and go on for just like, are songs you just want to dance for a super long time. I can't say like musically they're like reaching any like really must-hear peaks, but I don't think there's anything wrong with any song in this show. I think the set list is fantastic. It is a home run. And I absolutely love it. It is from Boise State, Idaho. If I'm not mistaken, the only show ever played in Boise, right? Or maybe they're in Idaho, or maybe the first one they played in Idaho. I want to say there was something special about it being in Idaho, but maybe that is something I'm misremembering. Either way, they brought it, and they brought it big. 3 discs, no bonus discs, no bonus tracks. It is the complete September 2nd, 83 show. What we have here is the first disc is the entirety of the first set, clocking it at who knows how long, under 80 minutes, obviously. But the entire show opens up with a Wang Dang Doodle. The entire show opens up with a cover of Willie Dixon's Wang Dang Doodle, which is kind of a weird little song. Usually that's Bob's like middle, maybe towards the end of the first half of the first set, like 4 or 5 songs in. You know, it's his blues selection usually. It'll take the place in this era of like a Walkin' Blues or a Little Red Rooster or something. Here it opens the show, and it just works. It just absolutely works. The energy is good. They're obviously having fun. They're obviously enjoying the fact that they're opening up with the Wang Dang Doodle, which is a great song, phenomenal song. And that kind of doesn't really go into, but quickly jumps into a Jack Straw as the sort of like official opener, since Wang Dang Doodle definitely feels like this weird little treat that they're just giving us before the show starts proper. But then the Jack Straw just continues with the energy, and it's fantastic. And absolutely hit it out of the bar park opener. They're both technically Bob songs, even though Jerry sings on Jack Straw. It always seems to fall into a Bob slot. So maybe, I don't know, maybe Jerry just wasn't ready to sing yet. But Bob gets 2 to kind of start off the show incredibly well. We get a really nice They Love Each Other to follow. Jerry's easing into that slower They Love Each Other groove, just kind of sowing his own oats. Really good They Love Each Other. Already like 3 fantastic songs to open up. We get a more typical Mama Big River. Mama tried into Big River. Big River's got some really good energy, nice and jammy. This band is obviously feeling themselves. They're obviously in a really good mood at this show. Then we get a Brown Eyed Women, in which that solo in Brown Eyed Women just kind of keeps going. And every time we run through like the cycle and Jerry's about to go back into the verse, it's like, no, I got more to say. And I think he does that like at least 2 times where like we get like 3 cycles of that little sort of progression that the solo would usually go over. And it just, in a Brown Eyed Women, it just feels epic. It feels like, man, this band is just here to play. Jerry is just here to play guitar. Like the energy is fantastic. And when you get like, I mean, already we're like what, 6 songs into the show, and it's a home run. Like, I'm sorry, it's out of the ballpark. Bob then gives us another blues song with the New Minglewood Blues. Again, nice and jammy. Brent's in the band now, so now we get some Midland soloing. It just kind of goes on for a super long time. They're really feeling it. They're enjoying playing together. Like the vibe is strong. Jerry follows that with a big Railroad Blues, which, as I've said, every time this has been on a set list, I am here for every one of these. I love this song. We get a super long Looks Like Rain, like an 11-minute Looks Like Rain. And like the first part is normal, but like the ending part when Bob's just kind of going off and improvising and yelling rain and kind of freestyling vocally and Jerry's kind of riffing under him, that goes on for a really, 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 really long time. And it's not like they're reaching an early peak and just like riding that peak and it's this frenzied finish. No, they're just taking a really long time to develop the end of it. And Bob's really enjoying himself. And like, once this became like a second set staple, it became to have a little more of this longer energy. But, you know, it's still in the first set. We haven't made it to that second set spot yet. And it just feels like it just goes on and on and on, but it works. The vibe is so good. You can tell the band just wants to like find a groove and write it and like enjoy it for as long as they can and just savor the moment. It just is like, nothing wrong with this. And Bob, of course, is in heaven because he just gets to go off as much as he wants. And the band is there to support him. And then Jerry, who doesn't want to be outdone, drops a 10-minute deal on us. Like the last 2 songs, the Looks Like Rain into Deal, which close out this, are over 20 minutes long combined. Like that's the end of their first set. And the Deal is just everything you want out of Deal. Like we're reaching that point now where Deal is not this like 5-minute little song with a solo at the end. It's like an epic set closer that like brings it, that like leaves you like satisfied, needing an intermission, but wanting more. And the deal is the deal that I have come like a lot of like deals from the 70s. When I started to see in the band in the mid 80s, deals were set closers of the first set, and they were huge and they were epic, and they were like, the jam didn't go a lot of crazy places, but it was rocking with a lot of energy. We're at that point now. These deals are like certified set closers. And this is a stupidly ridiculous first set. Set 1, fantastic. Already a winner of a show. Set 2, discs 2 and 3, take all of set 2. We get to open up set 2, a Help Slip Franklin's. Help on the way. Seems like they're kind of tearing their way through this. It's pretty quick, pretty brisk, pretty well performed, but it does feel almost like they're looking forward to getting to Slipknot. Like that's really why they play this song. Not because they want to play Help Slip, because they want to get into that Slipknot zone. Because when they enter that Slipknot zone, we get like just 7.5 minutes of that, not that spacey, where nothing jammy is happening, but that dark space where everybody kind of feels like they're doing their own thing. I always imagine like, I think there's a couple, I think it's an Ant-Man or Ant-Man and Wasp, but there's a Marvel, one of the Marvel movies, maybe even a little bit of Doctor Strange, when they're in like the quantum realm and things are like chaotic and flying all over the place. And, somebody's flying through this quantum realm, trying not to hit something. That's what Slipknot feels like. Slipknot feels like they're in this quantum realm, and Jerry's just trying to like make it through like these asteroids or these weird things, and the band is like fending off things or doing their own thing, and it kind of sounds chaotic, and it sounds like at any moment things could just fall apart because there doesn't seem to be a one, or there doesn't seem to be any sort of motif that everybody's like gathered around. It's like everybody's going crazy, but everybody's going forward, and there's energy, and it just somehow, the gravity of it all keeps everything cohesive. It is just, I can't say it's one of the best Slipknots ever, because there's a lot of really, really good Slipknots out there, but it is an absolutely fantastic Slipknot. Just that dark, improvisational, space that they would go to. Sometimes at like the end of Feel Like a Stranger, sometimes Cassidy's kind of flirted with that a little bit. I think Victim or the Crime, and when those endings got stretched out, would kind of have that feeling. It is just one of those just absolutely like beautiful, perfect, free-form, spacey, but dark and driven. And it is, the Slipknot is absolutely amazing. The peak of the show, hands down for me. That goes into a super long Franklin's. We get a 15, 14 plus minute Franklin's. And this Franklin's doesn't really have any like, where a lot of times in the Franklin's, you get like the first solo would maybe like kind of raise the spirits or raise the bar. And then you get usually the second or third solo, which you're really like pushing it and getting into the red and things are going crazy before you kind of ease it back down. This one never really has any peaks. It's like the entire time Jerry's just like, I'm going to play for 3 or 4 minutes. Everybody just dance and have a good time. And Jerry's just up there playing. Everybody's dancing, having a good time. The solos just go on and on and on and on and on. As we get toward the final solo towards the end, the intensity rises a little. Like Jerry knows, hey, we're out of verses. We're going to wrap this up soon. Let's up it a little bit. But it's not one of those really epic peaks. It's just like, I'm just going to play for a little bit longer, get a little more intense so you can dance a little faster. But really, it's all about the groove and just having a good time and having fun. Just an absolutely joyful, happy Franklin's. I think back in the time when I was seeing the Dead, I'm not sure there was a song in the regular rotation or the somewhat regular rotation that brought as much joy as Franklin's Tower did. Wasn't always coming in to help Slip because they weren't doing that. That kind of disappeared from set list for a while in the second half of the 80s. But they would do like a Feel Like a Franklin's, or what else would you get with a Franklin's? Most of the time it was like a Feel Like a Franklin's, right? You get like a Feel Like a Stranger in a Franklin's Tower. And man, when they would drop that, they'd finish Franklin's Tower and you just wait for that. It was just like, I can't think of any moment more joyful where you would just turn around or look around and everybody in the audience was dancing and having a good time. And it was just like the best vibe. This Franklin just brings that, just brings the positive, awesome energy. After that, we get a 25-minute estimated profit into Eyes of the World. Both of these are pretty standard estimated eyes. They're not going absolutely ridiculous places, but they're both fantastic. That middle jam and estimated profit, that like solo jam, right, where they're not really exploring, but Jerry's just kind of playing that same melody over and over, that feels epic. That feels like they're now finally leaning into that moment as a moment that could be like a high point of a set or a half a set. And it is great. Bobby and Brent, especially, you're pushing the energy in that. That middle part is just fantastic. We eventually get into like the post-estimated profit jam, and we get your like somewhat normal, like weirdly esoteric, kind of obtuse, estimated jam where it's like, we're not really in space. There seems to be like a center that everybody's noodling around, but it's not well formed. And, Phil is sometimes off doing his own thing. And yes, Phil is a lot of times driving this jam to some interesting places and definitely stepping forward a little more. Jerry, again, is just making all these weird melodic decisions and going all over the place. So it has that really weird sort of, boundaryless estimated jam, but it's not too far out there. And right when it finishes and they seem to sort of run out of ideas, we go into about 30 seconds to a minute of what sounds like a pre-drums jam where things feel like they're falling apart and the drums are accelerating and it feels like entropy is finally happening. But then that somehow eases into an Eyes of the World and they're off into a really good upbeat Eyes of the World. Eyes of the World, Phil, as always, is just kind of making his presence known as he always has in Eyes. And then once Eyes wraps up, there's a good, like, sort of post-last course jam. Jerry's getting very, like, noodly and kind of, tearing off licks as quickly as he can. But then Jerry kind of, I guess, is done. And Bobby and Brent and the drummers lay down just this rolling thunder type groove that just kind of continues. It just sounds like they're going to start drums, right? With this very like tom based, just a very like bass heavy rolling type drum sound. And then Bobby and Brent just keep playing, and just the Brent sounds are amazing. Bobby's doing some great rhythm work, and this goes on for what, like 3.5 minutes almost, and it's just a really, really nice, healthy, juicy, middling, weird lead jam that finally finds its way into drums. The drums keep up the energy, the momentum out of that jam for a while, but then kind of get a little bit subdued. Space eventually comes in. We get a space that the first, I don't know, third of it, maybe a little more, there's this, Bob is really pushing sort of the direction of the space, and there's a very sort of sinister, ominous, set the controls for the heart of the sun vibe that Bob is kind of laying down, that everybody's kind of playing off of. And then Bob starts playing these chords that almost sound like a Simon and Garfunkel tune. Almost sounds like a, oh, good, but it's great to be back home, type thing. Keep the customer satisfied. Maybe not that upbeat, but there's some definite, like, more optimistic, major chord, happy sounding, like Simon and Garfunkel energy, which is like, okay, this is interesting for space. But then he goes back to that sort of set the controls for the heart of the vibe sinisterness, then goes back to this upbeat sort of Simon and Garfunkel thing. And he plays with those ideas for a couple minutes, and then he kind of abandons it, and we go into what is like a more typical space where kind of people are bouncing all over the place for a while. And that goes on for like a good 10 minutes, that space, but it's absolutely excellent. Then we get a throwing stones out of space, which is pretty neat. It first started getting played, I think, in 82. So we're like, we've had a good couple dozen throwing stones by this time, but there's still some lyrics that will be changed before they actually go into the studio and record it. So we get, some new lyrics. And that middle solo, which would eventually become more like an estimated prophet solo, where Jerry's kind of just playing the main melody of the song and just kind of repeating ideas and building. It definitely has a looser feel to it. Bob and Brett again kind of step up, and it becomes a little more, like, a little hazier, a little more jammy, a little looser, like you're not really sure where it's going, and it could go somewhere different. It doesn't. And Jerry is still underneath Bob and Brett trying to do these, that your typical throwing stones type thing. But even he kind of gets into it, and it gets a little crazy and hazy and not as sort of focused as it would be, in a couple years. So it's a really neat, inspired middle jam. And then they finish throwing stones as normal. That, as they get to the end of throwing stones and they're laying down the ashes, that energy keeps up, and they find their way into one of the most perfect going down the road feeling bads. It is just, again, Brett and Bobby having a great time, adding a lot of texture to the intro before Jerry even steps up and sings. The sound is so good. It has such a driving, momentous energy about it. You feel like you're going down the road feeling bad, but like feeling bad, like windows down, sunglasses on, tunes on. You got a smoothie or an iced tea or some nice refreshing drink. The weather is like 75 degrees and beautiful. Like, you feel bad in like the best way possible. It is an almost perfect going down the road feeling bad. Just absolutely amazing. That goes into a Black Peter, kind of bringing the energy down, focusing it in a little more intensity. The song itself is pretty good and well performed. The solo at the end is nothing special to it. Jerry delivers off maybe about a minute or so of soloing before we wrap that up. But it's a nice sort of like, let's just take a moment and appreciate, get a little serious and remember life for 8 minutes or so before we get a Sugar Magnolia to end the main set. Typical Sugar Mag, Great Sunshine Daydream jam at the end. Then for the encore, we get It's All Over Now, Baby Blue. And it is the cherry on top of a perfect Sunday. Perfect performance of this song. Jerry gets the vocals, nice little solo in there, nice little energy, just an absolute perfect ending to one of the most surprisingly great shows of this tour, of this release, not of this tour, of this Dave's Picks release. I love this show. Where would I rank it among the other ones? I would put it right there. So there we go. I have it at number 10 right now. And I feel feel like that might be too far back in the list. Like, I don't know if this is, my recency bias wants me to rank it up there higher, but then I'm looking at those things that are higher, and I'm looking at that 72 show at number 9, which has pretty epic truck and other one in there. And I'm like, the Slipknot on this is great. The Wang, everything about this show is so great, but we're comparing, 72 with 83, and that's not a really fair comparison. How does 83 stand a chance? But I'm tempted to put it higher, but I might in the future. I might go back and say, you know what? I've reevaluated it, but for now, 10 is safe. But it's definitely at least a 10. I mean, this is an absolutely fantastic show. I'm absolutely in love with it. Again, it might just because everything else on here is mainly from the 70s and the freshness of it is so incredibly exciting. But then again, the Franklin's doesn't really elevate it too much. Other than the Slipknot, everything is just really is long and jammy, but not really reaching peaks. So maybe 10 is fair. But I don't know. This is a stupid project to rank 27. And I got like what? At least already at this point in time, like 17 more to go. So yeah, we're just getting muddied in here. So these are approximations, but I'm at number 10 right now. It's a top 10 show. Again, these shows are fantastic, right? These are like, even the ones at the back, those 71 shows. I just put them there because 71 is my least favorite tour, but they're still really, really good shows. I say that every time. I don't know why. But anyways, number 10. I put it in number 10, but it could be better. It might deserve to be better. And I apologize if it deserves better in some objective sense. But I really, really, really like this show a lot. Volume 27, 9283. But anyways, that's it. I went on for a long time about this, but it was worth it. It is worth it. I absolutely love the show. It is fantastic. It is worth many, many, many a listen. So check it out. Subscribe, like, leave your comments below. If you have watched the show, you know how all that stuff works. Let me know. And that's it. And go listen to music, people. Go listen to all the music. Go listen to this show. September 2nd, 1983. Grateful Dead. Dave Spix 27. It is amazing. Peace. Talk to you later.